already we've got everybody here, so.
Sure. Okay, well, yeah, so thank you all for being here. This is what we're doing, a Restore Local Control Tour roundtable, so it's great having a mix of everyone here from some supervisors, city council, mayor, school, your mayor, or your school board.
Oh, he's right here.
Okay, so good. We have a good mix of everyone. What it was really about is, I want to hear your guys' thoughts, what you're seeing as challenges, how we can best work together and have our voice heard as a local government, at the state level, feedback for Rob and I, and how we can do things better. I want to start off with the introduction. Some of us know each other, but I'm Dave Muhlbauer. I've been a Crawford County Supervisor for 8 years, farmed all my life in Crawford County, Manila, Iowa. Still there today. Kind of works out great for timing. We just had our ISAC annual conference this week, so it's our association for networking with local elected officials. So I have some fresh things in our head, right?
I don't know how fresh.
But
Some people don't forget.
Look forward to hearing all your guys' thoughts. So let's go around and do introductions.
Hello everyone, Tony Aylsworth. I'm the new superintendent of Southeast Polk Schools, been there for all of 1 month. Grew up in Iowa, born and raised, grew up in rural Iowa, still farm back home in Northeast Iowa. So wearing 2 hats here. I'm a farmer, but I'm also a school official. So thanks for having me.
Steve Richardson, mayor of Indianola, pretty much a lifelong resident of Indianola, graduate of Simpson College, former school teacher, and also got out of that in 2000 and got into private sales and construction. Where I'm at.
Dan Carver, I'm the mayor of Carlisle, which is just southeast corner of Des Moines there, and then I'm also a teacher as well. So I've taught in Carlisle this is my 21st year, and 3 years ago, went for the city council, and then 1 year ago went for the mayor. So here I am.
Yeah, a lot of educators around the table. I'm Steve Smith. I'm currently Guthrie County Supervisor. In my past life, I'm a retired superintendent of 24 years back in Guthrie Center and Dixie. Prior to that, I was a principal and a classroom teacher there as well. So. And I do a little farming.
I'd say you don't leave out the cattle. We talk about the
I
cattle.
have about 100 head of cattle that we run and play with. My boys and my grandkids.
Brian Lohse, my only connection to education was my mother was a teacher for 40+ years, so that was it. So just want to get that out, because everyone else has that education background. No, I'm currently the state representative for North and East Polk County. Served 8 years in the legislature, which will end in January. But before that, also was on the city council for Bondurant for about 8 years.
Sara, the mayor of Pleasant Hill, and I've been serving for 13 years now, and I'm also the CEO of Make-A-Wish, Iowa. So I also do the 99 county tour, because we have kids in every county that I serve.
Josh Mandelbaum. I'm a 3rd term on the Des Moines City Council. Lived most of my life in Des Moines, but I've been back a few times. In my day job now, I work at the Environmental and Policy Center. So I do clean energy, a lot of work at the Utility Commission as well.
Brian Johnson, I taught and coached for 12 years, and then lobbied for a long time up at the Iowa Capitol, and did some federal work, and am currently with Steve as a supervisor out of Guthrie County. So glad to be here. None of this, I'm capable of saying some dumb things. So, you know, I won't say it was on a commercial. Without permission.
You'll be good.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. This is a great group. I guess to kick it off, Brian and Steve and I as supervisor, I'd like to ask your guys' opinion. What do you guys see for Guthrie, your biggest challenges as supervisors coming forward? And what maybe we've gone through as far as could be an upcoming challenge or a challenge you guys are.
I'll hit 2 things and then kick the other one to you. EMS, obviously, we have issues in rural Guthrie County and also I think rural Iowa. I was just that sometimes it takes 30, 40, 45 minutes to get an ambulance from point A to point B. So working hard on that and watching things legislatively that might give us some support. And of course the other part is just trying to maintain infrastructure with grants and the funding that we get. Part of them kicked to Brian, which is the big heavy, and that's a problem for all of us, by the way, is how tax reform is going to affect us. Do we know?
I was just saying to Representative Lohse on the way in that I did go down to the Capitol a couple times this year just to, I don't know that many legislators there anymore, but did touch base with some and hoping we can do some modeling. But my biggest concern on that bill, and Guthrie County was really one of the targets for it. Our taxes have increased a great deal over the last 10 years, but is transportation, just with the cost of equipment, inflation on that. We have 300 miles or 700 miles worth of roads out there, a lot of gravel roads, and we need to keep that up. And so handling that, and then of course law enforcement is a big part of a county budget, and the city budget, I'm sure is all of it. So that, and then I think economic development out in rural counties, we're only about 50 minutes away from here, but finding growth and getting people to locate out there is, if we don't grow, we're going to really struggle. And so economic development on the end of that.
That's great. Dan, tell me what do you see on city level? What do you guys face similar things or a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably some of the similar things. A big word for us is just this property tax bill, and I think a major concern is that it's so hard to plan out and budget appropriately, and I don't even see how once we get into 1 year of it, like I don't see it getting better with that. It'll just change all the time. And, I think that we're all just very anxiously waiting for the numbers to come in so that we can figure out how to, like we all have the best interest when we're at the local government level to spend the money the wisest, most responsible way. It's sometimes disheartening when it feels like a message is going out there that we who got elected by our neighbors can't be trusted with our own money to be spending it the way that we think needs to happen. That's where a lot of times I feel just disappointed that the good work that we're trying to do within the city, and we got, across the political spectrum, people on our council and within our leadership, all trying to do the same thing, but we're just getting kind of handcuffed half the time, and that's really tough to then have to tell constituents, we don't have a say, it's out of our control, we don't know. That's not what they want to hear.
And I know you just, from supervising working with these guys, I mean, the collaboration and the networking and how many times call just, hey, what do you think about this or that? I mean, that's huge, and that's one great aspect of the program. I'm sure you guys see, do you have?
Don't know where you want me to start.
I
I left out the fact I've been on the council in Indianola 3 different times, one in the 90s, one in the 2000s, again in 2022, and then was elected mayor this last time around. But I was also in the state legislature for 6 years, served in the Ways and Means Committee and the House of Representatives. And so, Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I see in the state legislature is you have maybe 10 to 15 people that really understand property taxes and how they work. And so is that generous?
Being optimistic.
Ask them if
Well,
they know
okay.
how to find their property tax bill.
Yeah, so with that said, most of them just follow whatever leadership talks about and really doesn't understand the implications of where we are right now. I was at a county assessor's office yesterday trying to get information on what the homestead tax credit and the senior exemption is going to be and what the effects are going to be on that particular legislation. I ran my numbers this morning on what it's going to affect. For instance, $400,000 assessed home in Indianola, then immediately when you take off the rollback of 44.53%, you're down to $178,120. You have to take 10% of that as now your homestead exemption that you're going to take off. So now you take $17,800 $812 off of that assessed value. Then you add the $6,500 if you're over the age of 65, and now you're down to $153,808. So consequently, what you're looking at there is about $25,000 that come right off the top of your assessed value. We have about 6,000 homes in Indianola. I don't have an average of what those homes are going to be and what the average value of those homes are. I know there's some that's less than 100,000. I know there's some that are way over that into the $1 million range. And so whatever that number is, somewhere in that line, we've got to figure out that 6,000 homes, and just on this case, $25,000 off, we're looking probably anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million. Des Moines even in a tougher situation. But for a city our size to say, okay, we're gonna have to cut $1 million or $1.2 million out of our budget, that talks about the fact that you're probably taking libraries, swimming pools, parks and recreation, all of the amenities that people that don't have the hair color I have want, the things that bring people to Iowa, the trails, the wellness campus, the swimming pools, the things in the summertime, the parks that they can take their kids to. Those are the amenities they want. When I was door knocking last fall, that was what I heard a lot from the young folks in a fairly new development that we have in town. The other side, flip side of that is people my age want fire, EMS, police, they want the protection that's what's sometimes considered the essential services. But to the young folks, the essential services are the things I just mentioned as well. And so the problem we're going to have is when we get down to tough budget issues, if we have to cut $1 million out of our budget, out of our general fund budget of $9 or so million in just general fund dollars, doesn't include the other levies and things either. You're talking significant cuts in a lot of those programs that probably are going to get cut. And so you're going to try to keep fire, you're going to try to keep police, try to keep EMS. And those are the things that are really important. So that was very disheartening. But the fact is this, when you put a 2% cap on revenue growth, but you also allow the rollback to fluctuate between 46, 48, 50, 62%. When I first started in the legislature, or started in city government in the 1990s, the rollback was about 62%, 58%, something like that. It's down to 46 last year, it's now down to 44, so we've cut another 2% off of that. So now we lose our 2% growth cap. Plus the fact now that you got a 10% homestead tax credit, you're pulling that all down. I'm thinking probably, technically, if you really want to look at a true rollback, you're probably down into the 30% range. I got to do the numbers. I didn't run the numbers on that, but that's really probably where you're at. So that's the issues we're going to be coming into in this next legislative session. The problem we're also going to run into, Dave, to be real honest with you, is that they've spent down all of the dollars that we really have the last 6 or 8 years and underfunded so many different things and pulled money from different areas that I think it's going to be tough. If you guys make it and you're elected, I think it's going to be a real tough road to hoe because of the fact that you're going to be strapped with all of these things that you're not going to have the opportunity to raise taxes or do the things you need to do. I was much in favor of the Senate file when I was originally filed with Senator Dawson and allowing us to have a local option sales tax locally again, because I think that takes the burden off things. So here's one thing that Dan's heard me say this before, and so I'm sorry if I'm kind of getting long-winded here. Last year when I was door knocking, I only got to about 2,300 homes last year in the campaign for the governor, for the mayor. But I had 2 people out of all those houses tell me that property taxes were an issue. But the one guy that told me the property taxes were an issue told me this. He said, I go to the grocery store and I want to have a pizza for dinner. I can buy the dough, I can buy the cheese, I can buy the sauce, I can buy other ingredients and put it on there. I don't pay a sales tax. I don't have a choice when I buy a home. He says, but I also have a choice in at that grocery store. If I don't want to go home and fix that pizza, I can go over to the deli counter over there, buy it and pay a sales tax on that, but that's my choice. And I thought that was kind of an interesting point of view. And so that's where I think would be the best way for us to go if we have to figure out a way to do that. But again, we don't look at other options in the state of Iowa. People say, well, Iowa's not a tourist state. Well, we are in a lot of ways. There's 2 interstates that go through this state. I go visit my daughter in Madison, Wisconsin. I get a hotel because sometimes we get in late and stuff, and I don't want to upset a fairly young granddaughter we have. And so I don't look at the price of the hotel when I book the hotel. When I was staying in Verona, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison at a Hyatt place, we paid 27% taxes, city tax, state tax, county tax, tax on tax. So it was just crazy. But I don't think of that. I don't not stay there because of that. You know, there's just things like that that come to mind. But anyway, point being, I think we're going to have a real tough time here in the next couple of years if we stay where we are. We need to repeal House File 718, put us back in a case where the cities that have the 810 levy can go back up to 810, because the 300 cities or so that are above the 810, why punish the rest of the 800 and some odd cities that don't have a problem with an 810 levy? And to your points about, I think maybe one of the county supervisor's points here was about having difficulty with fire and EMS and things along that line. I really believe, and it kind of started when I first stepped in the Capitol in 1997 as a newly elected member of the House of Representatives. It seemed to me that there was a push to consolidate school districts and cities and counties. The problem when you do that is, if you go to southern Iowa, where we're kind of in the southern edge of the county or the state, but let's go to Bedford, Iowa, population 1,500, county seat town. You start consolidating Taylor County with somebody else, now they gotta drive to Clarinda, they gotta drive to Atlantic, or maybe to Creston. You know, you're talking 30, 40, 50 miles to get driver's license, license plates, all those kinds of things. And when you're doing that, it makes it so, well, okay, we're maybe saving dollars, but you're really putting the dollars that are being saved back on that individual person to meet the needs of that, rather than having a collective group of people in the community pay for those things and allow you to then spread that cost out among a lot of people rather than just one individual. So there's a lot of things out there.
To that point, I mean, and I think that's something that, you know, we do 2080 agreements all different times, and we have a shared 2080 with Carol for IT, and it seems like when you can consolidate services organically, that mutually work.
Yeah, makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense. But you're not taking away the other important things that you do as well.
Right.
My concern with this legislation is it's proportionally uneven. I mean, Des Moines is going to get hit hard because they're our largest city in the state of Iowa, right? And the others of us, as we move down the population category, are going to get hit hard as well. But it's a percentage. It's a straight flat percentage. So you think about the small towns down here that have a population of 1,500 or 500 or 426, and they have Glidden, Iowa, for instance. Vern Dirks, the council member at Carroll, put together some numbers on how the number of people in Glidden, Iowa that have homestead credit and also senior numbers. Houses don't get this. You don't get the same assessed value in Glidden, Iowa for those that you do in Carlisle or Indianola or even in your cities. But when you take that 10% right off the top of $150,000 assessed value, and you add that $6,500 on there if they're seniors, which I think, if I remember his numbers correctly, 46% of the seniors in Glidden, Iowa, people in Glidden, Iowa, the residents, are seniors that have the senior credit. I don't know what the numbers are of the homestead credit, but I guess it's pretty high. You're now having great significant problems with communities trying to raise money and provide basic services. My point with that is, I think you're going to see a number of cities say, hey county, guess what, we're going to unincorporate.
We've had that talk, we had, and that's a huge fear for us, especially that town in Asmal I was talking about, and I know you guys have.
We've got Jamaica.
So, yeah, that is a true concern.
So here's the thing, it goes from your general levy now to your rural levy, and the difference is what, $2 or $3 between a residential property and a city that pays your county taxes. It's like $5 and some cents, I think, or it is in Warren County, to $2 and some cents if you're living in the rural area. An unincorporated town now becomes your rural area. So it's going to hit you guys hard as well.
I would like to ask Tony, tell me about the school board and the school in general, just are you similar to what you're hearing from city and county?
Those are two way different things, schools and school boards, those are different issues all different talking points, but I appreciate you asking. No, I will tell you generally, having studied up on what you and Rob's campaign is about, particularly as it relates to education, generally very supportive of what I'm hearing and what I've seen in your platform, so thank you for that. I do have an idea on something that I think is very practical that would support a lot of Iowans, whether you're in rural counties, whether you're here in the city, and that is the need to expand what we're doing for early childhood access. So in Iowa right now, they fund a half-day preschool program. And if you look at the number of Iowans that are now qualifying for free or reduced lunch prices, which is an indicator of poverty and poverty rates across the state, if we could expand these programs so that children could have access earlier, we know it's the best way to combat the side effects of growing up in poverty. And so I know there's a price tag to it, but I share it in this circle just because I do think it's an issue where over the years we've whittled away and chipped away, to your point, at maybe an issue that you could work across both sides of the aisle on. I think we're getting closer to where there's mutual understanding of the value of this and maybe some consideration for it. So I'd love to see a multi-year plan to sort of phase it in where my previous school district, much smaller, would have been able to accommodate this very easily. My current school district at Southeast Polk, it's a mountain of a thing to try to make those adjustments. So if there's any way to get that fully funded preschool program, while we're doing it, let's deregulate the thing. If you look at the regulations for kindergarten, it's about 2 pages. If you look at the regulations for preschool, it's a binder full of stuff this thick. And I don't know whatever made that distinction, but if you're successful in the campaign and want to take that up, I'll leave my card with you. We can get it figured out.
Absolutely, thank you. And we get to Sarah, tell me years, I mean, you're all this.
And I won't repeat what's already been said, but I think if you guys are looking to be elected, the biggest thing that you have to face when it comes to the property tax bill, and I have some information from Department of Management where you can see over the last decade, every time a policy was passed against local control and our ability to do our job, residential property taxes went up. And nobody wants that in Iowa, so there's clearly a cost that's happening here. And then you can see additionally property taxes as a percentage of personal income in Iowa. And it has consistently gone down even though the narrative is we're paying more. And people are not deciphering between assessments and what they're paying. And then they're also not understanding that there can be up to 12 levies on a property tax bill. But what I want you to understand is cities and counties are the economic engines of the state and they've been turned off. And with not including TIF and tax abatement as the definition of new construction, I was closed for business. And the cities can't bring in new businesses. We therefore not bringing in more people who are paying property taxes and all the other taxes to the state, and then all the bars and restaurants, sales tax and so on. None of us can contribute to the growth anymore without running into a deficit or running into bigger problems.
You brought up the assessment. When we have our public hearings and our certifying our budget, I'm sure you guys are the same, very rarely do we have anyone come out.
Yeah.
Never.
However, when the assessments go up, we have a full house. And we have to differentiate and explain the difference.
Right. I know there is a way to fix this, and it can be done, but it has to be thoughtful and considerate, and you have to tie the assessor's code with the property tax bills. But the caps have to be removed, but at a bare minimum, you have to make sure TIF and tax abatement are included in new construction definition.
Josh?
Yeah, well, I'll piggyback on that. I mean, we're definitely hit from an economic development policy tools. We are very much limited in how we can use those tools today. And in a city like Des Moines, which is different than a lot of the other parts of the state, we're one of the oldest cities from an infrastructure, and a lot of our development, or some of the places where we need to use these tools, you build a hotel in downtown Des Moines, you're facing very different costs just to redevelop. I mean, one of the things, I was touring a redevelopment site, and the contractor was complaining, he's like, I'm looking forward to my next project, it's gonna be out in a cornfield, because figuring out just how to store the construction equipment on the site was enough of a challenge. There's a cost that goes with that. And if you don't have tools to address that differential, it makes it really hard to redevelop in an existing city. I would also add, not just the piece on those tools from a new construction, making it hard going forward, but part of the bargain that elected officials, myself, but even folks who came before me, when they offered abatement or tax incentive, part of the justification is you're gonna get this to help pay for the services down the road and you otherwise wouldn't. And the way this was done, anything that's kind of in that pipeline right now, we're not gonna get the benefit of that new tax revenue. So a project that is 15 years into a 20-year TIF, that's not gonna be able to help contribute to growth or services like they thought it was when they made that deal 10, 15 years ago. That just contributes to our deficit and what we have to make up. And it's not, that's part of the impact year over year over year. So we're going into next week, the city manager, we're early in the process, but the city managers identified he thinks it'll be around 12 million in impact. And so we've already been engaging with the public. We had public meetings. We created a budget calculator tool for the first time. We had 2,400 people fill out, unique individuals, fill out that budget calculator tool where they went and told us how they would fill, what are the things that they could live with. And we only let people, there are a lot of people who will advocate and say, hey, don't cut this is my favorite thing. I don't want this. They won't help us and tell us like, okay, if you want us to protect this, what are the other things that you're willing to do without? And you could only submit it if you came up with 12 million in cuts. And some of it's surprising, right? Like we had, there's some easy things like, okay, we get complaints about services like, takes too long to get a permit in the morning, but 84% of our residents were willing to have longer permit times. You cut one staff there, we're still providing the service, but that's fewer people, and what that really means is longer wait times. But you had a majority of the people who filled out that survey. Public safety is not going to be immune from this, and it just can't be when you're looking at numbers this big. We had 53% of the people who responded were okay with eliminating 2 or more police officers, which I was surprised by. But what they were saying, and this goes to kind of Steve's point, is they didn't want, and I mean, there were still deep cuts to libraries and parks, but they didn't want massive cuts there. They wanted some sense of proportionality, because the things that drive their quality of life, I mean, they respect and they love our first responders, but if you lose what those folks are protecting in the first place, that's a problem. And that's really what the legislature has done. Like the severity of this is you're cutting to the bone on just about every service that local government provides. And that's going to be longer wait times, longer response times, fewer amenities. And that impacts everyone's quality of life.
Brian, how do we work here? How do we get to where we can work together? What do you have ideas for us with local and state? How can we kind of navigate those waters?
It's gonna be tough to kind of undo some of the things that have been done. I think there's tweaks that probably people will listen to, but the message I relayed to our caucus, to the Republican caucus, the message I relate directly to the governor. If we really want to do something about property taxes and lowering them, we have to unleash growth. You look at what Bondurant did, what we did in Bondurant. Under the current scheme, Bondurant doesn't grow if we hadn't already grown. We used what little growth we had to finally make a decision to put in one sewer line and one water line. And down between I-80 coming up 65, there's one spot where we put a sewer line. And as soon as we did that, and it took 2 or 3 years for us to get the money to even do that, but to collect enough money. But once we did that, everything you see down there in Bondurant is because of that one sewer and water line. And then Facebook helped bring in the electrical and all that other stuff, which is key too. But our commercial growth went from basically nothing to $1 billion in assessed value. And our property taxes, as a result, since 2019, our valuation on a $200,000 house, or since 2019, it's now $300,000 easily, and probably more. I'm missing the number. I can't remember the exact numbers. But our property taxes on that same home, now valued at 50% or more than what it was since 2019, is 5 to 10% less than what they were paying. It's less than what they were paying in 2019. So it's ridiculous what growth, when you start spreading that burden all around to more people, more businesses, especially more businesses, it's going to mean lower property taxes for everybody. And that's the message I tried to relay, but they didn't listen. But that is one of the things we cannot shy away from encouraging, and I don't know how you do it now. If this 2% cap, when I came into the legislature in 2019, if you remember, there was a bill to impose a cap. And it was being run by a former mayor of New Sharon, Iowa, a good friend of mine. And I'm like, Dustin, what are you talking about? You're a mayor, you should know this isn't gonna work. And how bad an idea it was. But, and we didn't pass it in 2019, thankfully, but I don't know how, if Bondurant were where we were in 20, when I was on council, so 16, 17, 15, all those years, if that cap had been in place, Bondurant is still the 5,000 population, because we have nothing to grow, to use to grow. And I don't know how. We use the Donaldson, I think it's Donaldson, Iowa, sits right on 218. There's an exit 4-lane on 218, and they sit on the west side. There's nothing on the east side. With this bill, in my opinion, I don't know how, and their budget for the projections, we're gonna cut by 20 grand. Like, where are they gonna cut 20 grand? It's a small town.
Kind of goes back to Steve.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
that's my point. How many, I'm
Right.
sorry, Brent, I don't
Yeah.
interrupt you, but talking with, in our county, Lacona, Martinsdale, New Virginia, Milo, all of them have one full-time employee, they have one part-time clerk. I was talking with the clerk from Milo, she was telling me that this was before the numbers came out on the homestead and the senior exemptions. She was telling me they thought they're gonna have less than $3,000 new money next year. And again, the mayor of Lacona told me he thought there were gonna be less than $500 in new money in Lacona. And so what do you do with, back exactly to your point of growth in Bondurant before this, what do you do about those towns that have not had a new home or a new business in the last 5 years? You know, now there's nothing, there's no way to capture any of that. And now if the houses are getting another 15% really reduction in their assessed value based on that, how do you make things work? I mean, fuel's up, gas is up, rock is up if I'm graveling my streets, all of those things. How do you make it
Those
work?
variables are so hard to budget for too.
Exactly.
And on top
Snow
of that,
removal.
the smaller cities, well, every city now has dropped their reserve to 35%, which is gonna fundamentally change all of our bond ratings. So it's gonna cost the taxpayer more, and the cities have to go and bond, they're gonna pay more money for it. The smaller cities have more in reserves because they need more money to recover from natural disasters, or they've been saving for a special project without raising property
Right.
taxes. And so you're fundamentally telling rural Iowa, we don't care about you, with all of these restrictions and reductions being made on their property tax tools. I thought we were trying to grow.
I don't know how Donaldson, if Donaldson were to say, a business were to come to Donaldson and say, we want to build on the east side of 218. I don't know how they can afford to put in the infrastructure.
They
Because
couldn't
they're
even do
gonna
a match with IEDA.
Yeah.
You can't even do that.
so.
I do really like how you phrase that city and counties are the engine of growth.
They
I
are.
mean, that's not, I just love how you phrase that, because you're right, when you do see growth, and just the ripple effect of what it does in our towns.
If cities don't grow, Iowa doesn't grow.
Right.
That's right. I will throw one other thing out here. The League of Cities had a study done. There's about 7 or 8 different cities they looked at. Spencer is the one that I remember the most as kind of a magnet city. The fact that their population about 11,000, They draw people from over 60 miles away to work in the city. They grow about 7,000 or 8,000 people between 8 and 5 Monday through Friday. Des Moines does the same thing. We do the same thing. We have people in Indianola that come from northern Missouri, Sheraton, Albia, Creston area to work in our community as well. And I'm sure all of you do in certain areas. And so we don't think about the fact that the reasons why those folks live in those small towns is probably they may have grown up there, they may like the small town life, but they probably pay less, but they have the fuel costs to get into town and everything else, but that becomes their jobs. And so if we don't have solid, good cities, even smaller towns, you know, Guthrie Center, for instance, or anything that's Denison or anything else, if you don't have a good center, you're probably not going to have a lot of growth in your county. And that's what we're seeing is that, in my opinion, this is going to be really, really difficult for small towns. And I had one person tell me, you got to quit talking about small towns. You know, the rest of the cities in Iowa, you know, and to Josh, you know, you guys are the big ones, but here's what I see happening. Mayor Boson oftentimes talks about small communities dump their homeless in Des Moines, and you guys are trying to deal with that. But think about that on a larger basis. What happens now if they can't even do anything for those? What's going to happen and where are they going to go? I mean, that's just going to get worse. And so to that point, if we're not growing or helping ourselves, then that makes it more difficult for the city of Des Moines to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah, we were all tied together. Sure.
Exactly.
The other issue we're hearing is that administrative rules will not be coming out on the fiscal note. And so already the county auditors have a different interpretation of when and how everything gets applied. Is it on the assessed value? Is it after certain reductions have taken place? And even with our developers who are tied to TIF districts, some counties are saying, okay, we'll take the list of TIF districts and we'll stop once we get to the 2% increase, instead of taking all of them and applying it to all the TIF districts. So there are a lot of ramifications that are yet to be seen that are going to be really difficult to navigate across the state, and it will be inconsistent.
Well, that was brought up even at our.
Yeah, I wondered how Danny, how she walked away with that at the auditors.
And there's no clarity to provide guidance.
Brian, every time there was something major like this came along, they went to there was an administrative rules committee that usually worked through the summer to kind of get an idea, let the department know whatever department it was, what the intent of the legislature was on certain things. My understanding is, maybe you don't know, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but was there consideration of putting the administrative rules into this process and allow them to do that? Because if that would have happened, in my opinion, we would have some direction where the administrative rules would be going on this.
Well, typically the administrative rules committee doesn't review the rules until they're actually drafted and submitted to the, so they're gonna have to come up with them before the administrative rules committee actually gives feedback. So if they don't come up with them, there's nothing for them to review.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Now, you know, we rely, and you know, when we rely a lot, we write the laws knowing that there's gonna have to be some administrative rules generally, almost on every bill. And we just assume they're going to do that. Now, if they don't, there's probably some power to say you're going to do that.
Right.
But, and, you know, there's
It won't
always
be done in time for budgets.
No, it won't be done in time for budgets.
Tell me, like Josh, I mean, bigger cities, some of them, how do we start moving the ball in the right direction so that the government off what you guys, what everybody here is seeing, so we are open to having these conversations? I think it's gonna be a huge lift to get to where we need to. I mean, I think we're all very fearful of what's coming, but how are we moving forward? You know, like, how do we get to a point where we're on the same page and we can work together?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges, and I mean, it's gonna be hard because the folks who just passed this, they might recognize there needs to be some change, but they're gonna wanna, at least my sense, they're gonna wanna leave the big parts in place. And so how do you work within the framework they've already set to kind of address pieces of it? I think one of the consequences that people need to think about maybe is that new valuation piece. That seems like an easy fix, and not easy, but that's going to be critical to get growth going. Another piece that I've thought about, seems maybe a little more politically palatable. I know it was suggested to some of the folks. And I know you maybe don't want to complicate things with even more levies, but public safety being such a large portion, maybe having kind of a separate public safety levy that's treated a little bit differently. You know, in Des Moines, when you're looking at 60 to 70% of our budget is public safety, and the bulk of that is personnel. Some of it's equipment. You know, we're in the middle of a collective bargaining. We've got 3.5% that we're paying to increase our police officer salary. And or I think some of the colleagues up at the legislature said, well, maybe that's too generous. Arguably not even keeping up with inflation for our frontline folks. And that 3.5% means that we've got a pretty big deficit automatically. I mean, we're gonna have to be cutting. If you really believe in the work that those first responders do, which I think most of the folks, I think there's agreement, you don't wanna affect public safety, you could carve out a levy and that would provide some relief and make the impact.
There was one levy for police salaries and, you know, the first responder salaries that was not capped, was not subject to the cap. I don't know that.
The benefits package wasn't.
The benefits.
The benefits stuff, which is not necessarily at least there was some relief from that, but you're right, from when it comes to salaries and vehicles.
Cost of equipment,
that stuff's part of the cap. So yeah, that is one of the things I think that there's probably some room. I would hope that there's some room for discussion on that. I won't be there to discuss it, but it's with any major piece of legislation, you put it into place and then you're like, well, we're gonna have to come back and fix it. I mean, and there are tweaks along the way. Big changes are hard, but it's you know, there's always room for tweaking as you go.
Yeah, and it's got to be like a list of things that are tweaks that maybe they'll work with. There was some openness to alternative revenue, expanding the local option sales tax. There are drawbacks to that, but I think there's also going to be sales tax discussion. Everyone's talking about maybe wanting to do IWIL. Maybe that becomes part of a broader, what are we doing about sales tax policy that can help some of these local governments.
And the good news is this isn't rocket science. We just need the time and the right people around the table. This isn't something that can get solved in 6 months or 9 months, but if there was a true working group, both parties, developers, small towns, big towns, to sit down and fundamentally walk through every aspect and how it impacts across each other and what's available, I believe we can come forward with a realistic proposal that actually works and doesn't restrict growth. We just need the time and the support to work on it.
I would reflect the comment that it's not rocket science. I think anytime you deal with school funding and local government funding, it's akin to rocket science. It's complicated.
It is not.
Brian, go ahead.
No, I agree on that, with Josh on that. Well, I think the problem we run into, and I think politically, I think this could be a wave election, but I don't see the control of the House and the Senate changing, the numbers going down. I don't see control changing. But you gotta also then get in the room with ITR and these other groups that work so hard to pass this bill. And well, that really adds a different element to it. They gotta talk together.
Well, the only thing, to that point, the only thing I would say is when I was in the legislature, I was in the minority, but the number had dropped from a pretty much of a supermajority down to about, the difference of about, it was 53-47 when I was there.
Yeah.
And there were 3 or 4 Republican legislators that would always, certain issues they wouldn't go along with. They were just, it was absolutely, I mean, they literally held up the Republican caucus from doing some things. And so there are some things sometimes when you get to that narrow number that really makes a significant difference. I do want, if I may, just a couple of quick things. One of the things that I don't think people understand when they look at their escrow accounts on their homes if they have a mortgage is the fact that your home insurance has doubled in the last 2 years. And the answer, so I think Dave, to some of your questions is, do we pull that out of the, I don't know how we do that because that's part of your escrow account, but people have to start understanding that your home insurance, because I was in the top 5 for catastrophic events, natural events, our insurance has gone skyrocket. And I'll just tell you one quick story. My stepson, and works at Iowa State University. They went self-insurance on their auto fleet, right? And they were offering their employees the opportunity to do the same. So he was going to unbundle his house and home insurance and go with Iowa State. We're going to save about $600 a year. He went to his insurance agent. He said, well, you're going to have to go buy new insurance because your current insurance company will not allow you to just be single payer for home insurance. Their home's about $300,000 or $400,000 in Grimes. He went out on the open market. The lowest home insurance that he could get without bundling his car and home insurance was $12,000 a year for home insurance. So it's really an issue that when I ask people if they, and when I was, the other lady I talked about, the 2 people I talked about asked about property taxes, I asked her if she looked at her escrow account and knows what the home insurance value was on that. No idea. You don't know, I'm just looking at this, my taxes went up because did you look at your home insurance? That's probably what raised your escrow account. I'm going to speak to schools for just a second. When they took AEAs out of all of the local areas and went to a more of even a bigger regional area, it's really killed some of the things with kids that have some disabilities and a few other things like that. I had a friend of mine that worked for the AEA. They had an office in Indianola. He would go down to Bussy on a regular basis. I had a couple kids down there who were significantly handicapped kids. And he would be down there, and he could be down there in about 45 minutes to Bussy. If they had a problem, call him up, say, we need you down here today. Situation now is they got to come out of Des Moines. They may not get down there for a day or 2 days, and what does that do for the situation that's there? So I think that's a catastrophic mistake as well, and I think that it's really made it more difficult for school districts because now it's put back onto the teacher in the classroom, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there was just a bill passed this year on discipline and disruptions in the classroom that I think is going to affect you big.
Yeah, we're not even sure how it's going to affect us because there's so many unknowns, but
Yeah.
I think the intent was the right idea, and that's trying to keep teachers safe and trying to keep staff, keep schools a desirable place to work and spend your professional life. But the reality is, whether it's through the AA systems or whether it's through off-campus third-party vendors, there's nowhere to send our most troubled kids. Oftentimes we have to wait for an Orchard Place or another entity here in Des Moines to open up. That can be a year-plus wait. So it seems strange in today's world to be talking about off-campus placements. The general prevailing thought is we want to keep all kids on campus, but there's some kids that aren't meant to be served in a traditional school. And so, some way to incentivize these businesses to come back to Iowa and open these centers for kids that are struggling, whether it's mental health, whether it's severe, profound disabilities where they can't be in a comprehensive school. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill kid that just needs a little more support. I'm talking about the severe cases. And look around every one of your communities. I know somebody in every one of your communities, by the way. You all have these kids.
So we do.
So what happens to them maybe now? Is it just waiting in school?
Yeah, so right now, it just really depends on how the school's outfitted. So if they have staff, they go through a pyramid of interventions with regard to this teacher, and then you bring in this additional support paraprofessional to be with them, and then you bring a team of professionals together to troubleshoot ideas. But really, with the changes and reductions to the AAs, the opportunities to have other professionals get involved is almost non-existent.
Quick example. Daughter who worked at West Des Moines School District was assigned to a student that had already given one teacher a concussion, had been in multiple situations where there were the folks that were interacting with him on a daily basis were abused or hit or damaged or physically harmed. She was with him for a little while, did well with him, but she was in constant fear that he was going to do something to her and permanently hurt her, and so she just said, I'm done, not doing this anymore.
And I don't want to dominate any more of the airtime, but I think in most instances, the students like that are assaulting teachers are already involved in some sort of a special education plan.
Yep.
In our world, we call it an IEP.
Yep.
That means they have a federally guaranteed right to be in school. And so I think the legislature had the right idea last year with this bill and passing it to protect teachers. But the realities are is that 99% of these kids that are assaulting teachers and making life really difficult for the other kids to learn already have this federal entitlement programs, and it's not going to do any good.
You're not gonna be able to handle it.
Dave, we've got about 10 minutes left if you want to start wrapping up the conversation.
Sure.
Can I just add?
Jump
I just want to
in.
put something real quick into your bring it up, and just so you guys have this for the future. We were talking about insurance. That is a big piece of cost, and a couple states have passed it. I think other states have contemplated it, may have passed it already. Catastrophe savings accounts. They're kind of like a flexible spending account. I tried to get it put in the property tax bill. There was some interest in it, even from the governor. Ultimately didn't, but basically it's a tax advantaged account where you can put money in, and then you can basically start buying down your premium with a larger deductible, because you got this money sitting aside. Love to see it expanded also to like generators. So you buy a generator when you don't need it, so it's cheaper and you can find one. But you keep it there. But it has made significant improvement in premiums in South Carolina and Mississippi. So it's a plan that works.
Kind of like a partially self-funded.
So it's essentially a self-funded, but it's tax advantage. So it's self-insurance essentially.
It is.
Yeah.
But don't forget, insurance rates are established based on the qualifications of local fire and EMS and how they are ranked. And so as we continue to live under this growth cap, that's going to continue to be hurt because they're pulling the data and the numbers from local.
I will tell you though, that's driving the cost, purely claim cost.
Right.
Almost 100% claim cost. So, yep. So you're able to take some of that claim cost on yourself, that premium. The premium will be less because essentially you got a higher deductible, right? That money, because that money is sitting in your account. But anyway, I just want to throw that out and bring that up.
We'll follow with you on that.
Yeah.
But, since we do, Cody say we have about 5-10 minutes left. I would like to go around the room and leave me with something. Leave me with pieces of advice or what you'd like to see the governor's office work on, or how the relationship works. But I mean, I want this to be an opportunity for you guys to give me feedback, because this is important to Rob and I. This is something that I really like, going around the state and doing these roundtables. I think it's valuable information and stuff that we need to get back to the governor's office. So
I was afraid you were going to start here.
you want me to come down here, bro?
Gosh, I don't know that I have a bunch of wisdom for you. I appreciate the outreach. In a room full of, well, I shouldn't say non-educators, because there's some of you that's near and dear to your heart, but I'll leave my card with you. Just please know there's many of us that would love to have a roundtable like this and talk just education, so that we're not wasting the airtime on other topics. So just know that open-ended, if there's something I can do to help you, we really want to see this thing through, and wish you the best of luck.
Absolutely, excellent.
I'm going to partner with Sara on this one, that the definition of new value has got to be put back into the TIF and the abatement programs, and allow those cities and counties and anybody else that's doing an abatement or a TIF program to carry forward that new value, and what Josh mentioned as well. Otherwise, everything's stopped right now. I mean, we're not doing anything new after the first of this year. And I've talked to a lot of the mayors around the area, and the same thing is happening. So that new value has got to change if you want economic growth in the state. That new value has got to change to allow that value to continue through the term of that TIF or that abatement program.
So I would just say, I'm new to the mayor role. I'm learning a lot still. And in that short time that I've been the mayor, I guess my hope, if you guys are in office, is that like you would engage and listen to us who are on the front lines. And while I haven't been around for a very long time, I've not sat in one single meeting where there's been a city or a county or someone else, elected official who said, I am sure excited about this property tax bill. Man, they knocked it out of the park on that one. Like, to a T, I've never heard it. So I don't know where the support came from. And again, I'm just naive at this point, I guess, because I don't know how the things happen, but no one has said that this was what, like we want to do and have in mind. So.
Did you say that, Brian?
At first I thought it must be, I said, it must be in Guthrie. Guthrie County must be in favor of this or something. Anyway, That would be my hope, would just be like, we're on the front lines. I think from what I've said or heard also in these meetings, a lot of ideas. No one's saying shut it down, and no one's saying don't touch property taxes. We wanna, like, that's untouchable. It's lots of ideas people wanna work with, but I didn't get the feeling that we were listened to.
Right.
I'm gonna dive into something that we haven't talked about today just for a second. And that is rural healthcare, rural hospitals. I think it would behoove you to sit around the table with those folks that are, well, I mean, even Unity Point. Those folks have things to share about what they don't like happening when all the rural folks have to come in to see them, and it's going to be a disaster as well. I don't know how. I have no answers.
No, but that's a good point, because I know, like, you guys talked about how it's small town food services and they do.
There's more here.
Here,
Yep.
the same thing with hospitals.
Unity Point, a person from Unity Point said, we don't want your people, because that was a fear out in Guthrie County that Unity Point was just gonna take over the hospital. And they said, not true. We want you to exist so that you take care of your own. We don't have room here. So for whatever.
Good point being brought up, Steve.
Well, if I would have known you were gonna ask that question, I wouldn't have brought up the catastrophe savings accounts, but I think that is one, and I realize it doesn't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily affect local government, but it does affect the taxpayers within there and the homeowners. I think that is a big.
But it does affect local government because our rates as a city for our
Yeah, that's
liability and
true.
liability
Yeah.
are increased as well, and so those are critical things. We are self-funded in our health insurance program, which has saved us tons of money because we've got a healthy self-insurance program, but it does affect us in property casualty.
I think that's one of the biggest things that, and an easy thing, that's an easy lift.
Yeah.
That's just a simple thing that could be done and truly affect every taxpayer or homeowner in the state in a positive way, so.
I already said changing TIF and tax abatement, but the other thing that absolutely needs addressed is lowest responsible bidder. Every city and county is paying way more in change orders than a project should cost, and you're seeing this for schools, public safety, any governmental building or any road project. This has to be a real conversation, because cities are just, especially from my perspective, getting destroyed over selecting the lowest responsible bidder and then ending up paying more.
We have a number of contractors that have figured out how to game the system.
Yep.
And they've gotten very good at it, and there's been no recourse. I mean, just, you Google it right now, you're gonna find 8 or 10 KCCI articles with central Iowa, cities, counties, schools, community colleges that are jammed up with these 3 or 4 bad actors, and they just know how to win the system.
Yep. They get paid a minimum that they want and walk away from a project. And then that entity is left holding the bag, trying to salvage a project that's now over budget and not behind. Yeah.
And what other world can you not call references? And, based on previous work on similar projects, use that to assess the value of somebody's bid on a project.
Well, one of the, we just there've been a couple local control. I mean, I think giving some of us a little more freedom to actually make policy decisions and cater solutions that work for our communities and that are unique to our communities. I'll give one example of where we have a problem that probably most other communities didn't, and we had a solution to that. We're a larger community. We have housing vouchers, and there is a massive wait list. Like, we frequently have 3,000-4,000 people. People can wait years to get that housing voucher, and they get it, and they can't use it, not because they can't find apartments that they can't afford, but that they can't find apartments that they can afford where they're allowed to use their housing voucher. And so we passed an ordinance that said you can't reject someone based on how they want to pay. Like, go ahead, do your criminal background check, make sure your income checks out. But if you want to pay with your housing voucher, or if you have alimony or child support, want to pay that way, you you can't reject someone because it's not job income. And that tool was taken away. I mean, I bet everyone could go around and talk about I could talk about a dozen different policies that where our freedom to act has been taken away. But that was something that impacts us in solving a problem that, unlock us on some of these things. And that lowest responsible bidder is another example of that, where we've tied our hands to do our due diligence and do our good work. But there are a lot of things like that where we have unique circumstances and could really make a difference in people's lives, but legislatures decided they don't want us to.
I guess I just,
Last.
yeah, I've had the longest to think about it. I guess I would say almost go into this local control issue. I think for a county like ours, you have more in your ward than we do in our county. And to be able to not put constraints on us about what kind of industry can come in and not. And I'm thinking about data centers, I'm thinking about big warehouses, modular nuclear units, those kind of things that leave it up to us to talk to our citizens. And if that's an area of growth we can utilize and it's needed in Iowa, give us an option to do that. But there's so many, seems like the governors and others around now that are pausing this or that. I know it's a controversial issue, but give us freedom to look at some of that stuff. So.
Well, that's kind of what we talked about today. I mean, we have a baseline of be a fair player. Come in, add to the community. Here's the baseline of law. But then leave it up to the locals, like we're working on one right now, where it's what fits Crawford County. And if you want to be a county that has more money, it's the locals get to decide what's best for them. But, no, I do appreciate everyone coming in. I know we're out of time here, but thank you so much for your input. I mean, I want to continue this conversation, and this is kind of a role that we talked about and have Rob having me do, and so I wanted that it's right up my wheelhouse of being a supervisor, and look forward to continuing this conversation.
Great.
We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much, we appreciate it.
Dave, would you do more, just thinking about a Guthrie, Audubon, kind of Crawford County thing, that you could get those folks together?
Absolutely. I mean, especially even depending on how things go, but like afterwards, I'd love to go around it in the state full time and just meet with city council, supervisors, just the people, schools and hospitals, kind of be that eyes and ear for people at the local level.
I mean, as you know, clearly, our rural schools have way different issues.
Oh, yeah.
Others, they have way other issues that you don't want to touch, but,
Yeah, recruiting. They're recruiting. I'm just kidding.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Well, you talking about.
he's old school, this way.
We're doing all right. I'm on the Manning Hospital, Critical Access Hospital board, and we have good employees there, but it is a challenge to find providers. Bringing them in this small town, or keeping them there.
There are a lot of what I would call healthcare deserts in Iowa, and if we do consolidations,
I mean, we're 40 minutes from Unity Point, so we can do a lot with them, but you go back, you get out further and it
You
becomes.
take us, I mean, we got Carroll or Harlan or Denison, but Harlan's the only one that delivers babies.
Right. I had a new employee join us. She moved from Minneapolis to the metro, and she was in her last month and could not find anyone local to deliver her. No complications, regular delivery, had to go to another county for a delivery.
I don't wanna cut the conversation off, but I gotta keep this guy moving.
That's a tough
Lucky
job.
you.